What kind of political system do we want in Singapore? I would list 5 desiderata, desirable things. First, it must enable us to have a high-quality government, accountable, honest, competent, effective. You have to be responsive to the people, able to look beyond the short term and keep us safe and successful. Because we are, as a small country with no luxury of resources or no domestic hinterland, excellence and integrity have been and always must be a crucial competitive advantage for Singapore. An excellent, honest government. It's something which we have, which we can do, which others can see, not so easy for others to duplicate. And I'll put this quite bluntly, if we hadn't had a first-class government in Singapore, led by exceptional leaders who were able to foresee problems, head them off, seize opportunities, reap dividends for Singapore, and mobilize people to work with them and to support policies, sometimes tough ones, we would not have Singapore today. So we cannot ever afford to be paralyzed, gridlocked, or become dysfunctional like some other countries. For America, you can live with it. You go down, you go up, it's an aircraft carrier. For Singapore, you go down, you're finished, you don't come back up again. Secondly, the political system has to be open and contestable. What do I mean? There have to be free and fair elections, and it must not be forbiddingly expensive for people to stand and contest elections. In fact, that is one of the greatest things we have done to keep our system open, to make sure that we keep money out of politics, and it doesn't cost a lot of money to contest elections. So you take last year's general elections, all of the parties together added up, national general election, they spent all of $7 million, less than $3 per voter. Straits Times calculated it at $2.89. You compare that with the cost of the US elections. In 2012, when they last had the presidential election together with congressional elections, it cost them $7 billion US. Not cost the government to run it, cost the candidates to raise it and to spend it. $7 billion US. Divide by about 350 million Americans. That's $20 per American. That, you may say, is American class, one of its own. But look at the money politics you see in many countries, including in our region. The sums which are spoken about, which are necessary for elections, openly. Not a secret, not even illegal or embarrassing. But it's a reality. It's an insoluble problem. And ours must never become like that. Thirdly, a political system, our political system must foster accountability so that the government is always kept on its toes and will always be motivated to look after the interests of Singaporeans. Parliament here must be a serious forum where big issues are discussed and decided. Defense, the economy, choices to tax and spend, plans for the future. Government's actions have to be scrutinized and debated in Parliament. And if an MP, whether it's an opposition MP or a government MP, makes a case, argues a case against the government's proposal, then either the government has to be able to rebut it and explain convincingly what it is doing and why. Or if the MP makes a good case, then you have to acknowledge that, and policies have to be changed. And that's what MPs have seen happen in this House. Not just with opposition MPs, but with government MPs or NMPs as well. On the other side, if MPs make a good proposal and advocates convincingly for it and persuades the government, then I think the government should support it, back it with resources, and help to make it happen. As also has happened with PAP MPs and nominated MPs who have from time to time moved private member bills, and other times have persuaded the government that their bee in the bonnet is a justified bee in the bonnet, and we should do what they are buzzing us loudly to carry out. Every government must take Parliament seriously, and I think we take Parliament seriously in Singapore on both sides of the House. Is a place where you have debates, where big issues have to come to be decided. You can agree or disagree, and vigorously, and you ought to if you disagree, if you have strong views. But you must take it seriously. It's not a place where you throw chairs or swing handbags or pour water on one another. Or a place where you exchange clever put-downs, but really avoid the serious issues concerning the government and the future of the country. So our Parliament, it may not be as entertaining on television as many other parliaments which you watch on the news at night. But I think in terms of quality and seriousness of purpose, we have it and we should keep it. Ultimately, of course, the government is accountable not just to the Parliament, but also to the electorate. If it performs well, then it gets the support of voters again, and it can continue in office. If it performs poorly, there's an electoral price to pay. Then either the government mends its ways and regains its support, or the electorate can vote it out, and another party, another team will have to take its place and try to do better. So we must have a system where the government does not over time become complacent, go soft, or even worse, become corrupt. Fourthly, our political system must uphold a multiracial society. Multiracialism is fundamental to our identity as a nation, because we have 3 major races in Singapore. We have all the world's major religions in Singapore, and race and religion will always be fundamental tectonic fault lines for us. If we ever split along one of these fault lines, that's the end of us. Therefore, our political system must encourage multiracial and secular politics, not racial or religious politics. It's got to encourage political parties to seek broad-based multiracial consensus and pursue moderate policies in the interests of all Singaporeans, regardless of race, language, or religion. It has to discourage parties from forming along racial or religious lines or championing the interests of one race or religion over others, whether it be a majority or minority group in our society. Minority Singaporeans must have the confidence that they will not ever be marginalized or shut out or discriminated against. And every Singaporean must have the confidence that he has a place in Singapore. Fifth, our system needs to incorporate stabilizers. The government has to be responsive to the will of the people, but at the same time you have also to have safeguards in case the country is swept off course by a transient public mood or an erratic government, which can happen. And by the time you change your mind and you realize that it's unwise, it's too late to come back. So you need stabilizers to make sure that you respond to the mood, but you don't get carried too far and capsize the boat. Most political systems have such stabilizers built in. They have an upper house, like the Senate in the US, the House of Lords in the UK. Or, especially in big countries, you have a division of powers between city and regional governments and a national federal government on the other. So, no single point can cause the whole system to fail. You clear the lower house, you must still pass the upper house. Elections may be different times, may be different rules. You persuade one region you need to do something, it's a big country, other regions have to go along. You have to get a consensus, take some time, sleep it over, think carefully, and perhaps think the better of it. We are too small to have either an upper house or to have a regional set of governments. The most we can do are town councils. Useful, but not really a regional government. And we've overlaid on top of them mayors. We call them mayors, but actually, if you compare them with the mayor of London or the mayor of New York, it's what they call 小巫见大巫. It's a small personality, same title, but it's quite a different entity indeed. But we may be small, we still need stabilizers. And especially we need stabilizers in two areas: protecting our reserves and safeguarding the integrity of our public service. Why do I say this? Because these are two critical elements that give us safety, security, assurance, and resources for the future. It's taken us decades to build up our foreign reserves. They are our oil in the ground. If you don't have a second key, and you happen to have a generous or profligate government, then one government can spend it all and bring you back to zero. Elections will become auctions, where the parties compete to be more generous than the other, offering what it can do to voters by raiding the bank, as happens in countries much richer than us. You look at Australia, when 10 years ago, under basically a conservative government, they built up a significant amount of reserves or surpluses. They set up pension fund for the future, and they said this is our sovereign wealth fund, and this is to make sure that in future you'll be provided for state pensions and so on. But then came elections, and both parties, whether in government or out of government, because of the dynamic of the situation, they had no choice. One side offers something, the other side offers more, and back and forth. It's an auction. Today, the funds for the future have disappeared. The country is in deficit. The commodities boom is over. The budgets cannot be settled. They have to cut back spending. It's extremely contentious. We are back where they were, all within 10 years. It can happen to Australia with all that wealth and resources. Think what can happen if it's Singapore. That's money. What about people? The whole of our excellence in government, competence, the performance of the country, depends on the integrity and the ability of the individuals in the key posts in the public service. Judges, central bankers, the accountant general, the commissioner of police, the people who head our stat boards, who sit on our stat board, key stat boards, the people who manage our reserves. Once corrupt persons get into key positions, that's the end. It's not only the end because they take money and help themselves, because you can stop that and put them in jail. It's the end because they subvert and corrupt the system and make it impossible to root out the cancer, which then becomes entrenched throughout the system. The system is permanently broken. You look at other countries. President SBY, President Yudhoyono of Indonesia, used to lament publicly about the problem he had with what he called the judicial mafia. He doesn't mean the mafia on the streets. He means judges whom he could not trust for their integrity because they had become corrupt and they had become part of the problem. You look at other countries where the police are in cahoots with the crooks. And if you have a problem, you're not sure whether you should go to the police station or run away from the police station. Or you look at countries where those responsible for safeguarding state assets instead raid the bank. As the Malay proverb goes, pagar makan padi. You are the hedge, but you are eating the rice which you are supposed to protect. To prevent this, or at least to make this harder, this system needs a second key. And the challenge is for us how to ensure this second key strengthens and stabilizes our system of government.